Well, good evening, everyone. How are you doing? My name is Lee Love, and this is welcome to another Friday night Photo Mentor TV live question and answer. This is where I get a chance to answer your questions about all things photography. It's primarily oriented toward new photographers, but anyone can, of course, join in. If you're watching this now, then you probably know it's on our Facebook page, but we're streaming both to Facebook and YouTube. The URL is the easiest way to get to it is facebook.photomentor.tv will take you right to the Facebook page, and youtube.photomentor.tv will take you right to the YouTube page. But either way, we're glad you joined us. If you're here not live and you're watching the replay, again, welcome anyway. Glad you could be here. I wanted to tell you a couple things we got going on. The first thing is that I've decided to do, I see a lot of people posting critiques, constructive criticism on their photos on a lot of forums and Facebook groups. And so I've decided to start offering, I'm going to do once a month, I'm going to take your submissions and I'm going to go through them, and we're going to do a little review on them. I'll kind of give you some ideas about, kind of what things to look for. I will show you what they are here. So the first thing we're going to do is you can submit up to 3 images per month. Again, we'll do this once a month. But you don't have to do 3, but you can submit up to 3 a month. The reviews will be anonymous. I won't use your name. Of course, I'll know who you are, but that's okay. I'll use probably your initials and maybe a number or a date or something. So the reviews, although they won't be critical, believe me, I'm here to encourage you, not discourage you. So it's not like you have to be ashamed of your work. But just in case people are afraid or new photographers don't want to show their name or their work, then I want to honor that. So again, it will be anonymous, and that's one thing you can do. The other thing is I'll be looking at 3 different criteria for your photos. I'll be looking at composition. We'll be looking at the technical aspects, of course, and then, of course, the subject matter, how well you've conveyed the subject matter based on what I see in the image. And then the other thing is, again, monthly. We'll do this once a month, the first Friday of every month, which is when we do this show every week, but the first Friday, so in other words, next week, which is October 3rd, I believe, is the next one, and that's when we'll start the very first reviews. So if you would like to participate, which I encourage you to do, feel free to send me an email to help@photomentor.tv. And I'd appreciate if you, in the subject line, you just put the word review, and that way it'll filter it out for me, and then it doesn't get congested with all the other email. I don't have all the details set up on how I'm going to automate this and give you the instructions, but once I get your email, I'll figure out a way to send you some instructions on how to submit your photos. So again, you can submit 3 photos per month. The reviews will be anonymous. I won't use your name. Just probably your initials and some kind of a number. We'll be looking at composition, technical, and subject matter. We'll do this the first Friday of every month. And of course, send an email to help@photomentor.tv with the subject being review. And I appreciate if you do that. I'd love to look at your work, love to see what you guys are doing out there. And I will say that this is, again, the intention of this is to help you, not discourage you, not criticize, just to kind of show what maybe areas you can work on, what you're doing right, maybe some things that you might want to improve on, or maybe if you're just hitting out a ballpark, you'll get that kind of feedback as well. So again, join me next week on that. We'll do the first one. So send me an email to help@photomentor.tv with the word review in the subject matter. As I said before, we do this every week, every Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. I guess that's 6 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time. And if you're in other parts of the world, that would be 0100 Universal Coordinated Time. One of the things that is important to me, and one of the reasons why I even do this at all, because it's a lot of work, quite frankly. Every week I got to, compile the information, put the questions together, put the graphics together that goes with it, and so it's a lot of work. But one of the reasons I do this is because I see so much misinformation and things going on in groups and forums, and it just breaks my heart to see new photographers discouraged or put down or given the wrong information. So what I try to do is collect the best information I have based on my experience of 20, 30 years of being a photographer, commercial photographer, plus all the experts that I know. Don't know everything, but I have a pretty good depth of people I can pull from if I need additional expertise. But the thing is, I want to make sure that people get the right information. So what I'm going to do tonight, now, I'm going to show you something. An example of what I'm talking about. Now, I'm not going to put any names on this. This is not intended to call anybody out or put anybody down or anything like that. It's just an example, because this happens all over the internet and all over Facebook and all over other groups. So it's not specific to this example I'm going to give you here. But this was a post from a young lady, and she basically, and I kind of reworded it a little bit. She said, "Help, I'm getting frustrated with indoor light. The camera is fine, makes me think it's me, but in low light, I can't seem to get it right. It's not that it's dark in here. I put it in aperture priority, which is AV on a Canon. It puts the shutter so slow that it's light enough, but still blurry. In the TV mode, which would be shutter priority, the shutter is at 1/80th, it's so dark. Any guidance is much appreciated." Now, so she posted a picture of the back of her camera, and I wanted to show you guys a couple of things. I need a telestrator so I can mark this up here. But if you look in the upper left-hand corner, you can see that the shutter speed is 1/80th of a second, which is pretty hard to handhold, and it's f4.5. She's on TV in that particular mode, and she's at ISO 3200. So that gives you some idea of kind of what she's working with. I don't know that she mentioned in here. Maybe I didn't put it in here, but I should also add she's using an 18 to 55 millimeter kit lens. So if those of you that know that lens, you know that it's, I think at the fastest, it's a 3.5 to a 5.6, I think. Maybe even to 4.5. I'm not even sure it's the fastest. So it's not a terribly fast lens. And she's already using ISO 3200, which is pretty fast. So what I wanted to kind of go over a little bit was what's frustrating is the kind of answers that this young lady received and why I do what I do and why it's so frustrating for me. So the first answer is, it says your camera cannot adjust to low light like your eyes can. You're shooting it beyond its capabilities. And that's actually a fairly accurate response. It's true. A faster lens, higher ISO, some other things would allow you to do that. And our eyes certainly pick up more light in most cases than our cameras do. And so it's easy it's good advice. Now, the problem is it doesn't help her solve her problem. And this is the thing that I want to mention is that as photographers, I believe our number one job is to solve our clients' problems. Our clients come to us not because they want pretty pictures, and they really have something they're trying for us to solve, a problem. Now, they may say, I want wedding pictures, or I want, some kind of portraits or something like that. But what they're really saying is, I want you to create something that makes me feel good about myself, captures a moment, and really makes me look better than I look in real life, most people feel like. That's the problem they're trying to solve. If it was just about taking pretty pictures, anybody with a camera, anybody with an iPhone could do the job. And so it really is not just about taking pictures. It's about trying to understand and read between the lines, what they're asking for, and then providing that solution. So this response right here is not a bad response, although it doesn't really solve the problem. So let's look at another one here. The next one is, It says, look up YouTube videos for your camera. Now, this is a common one. This one is really irritates me when I see these kind of comments because, first of all, I assume the person is smart enough. Maybe they've looked at the manual, maybe not. That's if you're a guy, you probably didn't, by the way. But I assume that the person's already looked under YouTube and looked and Googled the problem to find the solution before they've gone to a group and a forum and publicly posted their problem. So leaving an answer like something like this is of no help whatsoever. It really, it's easy. It's an easy way out. It's a cheap shot, and I don't understand why people continue to give this kind of advice. It just really frustrates me when I see these kinds of replies. Not everybody learns the same either. One of the things is if you don't know what you're looking for, how do you know what to search for, right? If you don't know the terms, if you don't really know how to describe it, you could be searching on all kinds of things and never find the answer. So that's why this doesn't really help much. One of the other answers was push the settings, f-stop as low as it can go, let the light into the camera, and then ISO 200, and shutter speed maybe 200. Well, again, this person didn't even read the question, because if you look at the graphic, she's already at ISO 3200. She's got a camera that won't go beyond 4.5. And she's already at shutter speed of 200 at 80, and it's still not enough light. So I don't understand what this person was trying to solve, what problem, but they weren't solving the problem this young lady was asking about. So again, I don't understand where this comes from. It's these people. It looks like people don't even read the question. They just throw out some kind of an answer that's totally irrelevant to the situation. Because if you look at the graphic, if you look at the picture of the back of the camera, you can already see that she's not able to do that. So the next one is try changing white balance to indoor setting, switch to manual mode so you have more control over your settings. I suggest using tungsten light and white balance, ISO 800, aperture 2.0, shutter speed 2/50th. Okay, again, number one, white balance has nothing to do with adding more light to the scene. She's already at ISO 3200, so ISO 800 is not going to be anywhere near close enough. You can't make up aperture 2.0. Where does that come from? The lens is already open at 4.5, probably as wide as it can go. And she's already at a shutter speed of 1/80th of a second, and she still doesn't have enough light. So once again, I don't understand. And going on manual mode is not going to help. You'd be better off going on auto and let the camera automatically pick, pick what the ISO should be. So anyway, and Keith, nice to see you in here. I'm going to get your question in just a second. If you want to go ahead and post it, I will bring it up as soon as you post your question. So I don't understand how white balance is supposed to help. And then here's another one. I think this person was trying to be kind of funny because it really is. You need a tripod with slow shutter speed because even your hands will create camera shake and your subject will be blurry, and to get your son to hold still for 5 seconds. So that's true. I mean, obviously a tripod, you can't use a tripod except on a still subject. And I know the person was trying to make a joke of it, and I get that. That's fine. But the point is, whatever the answer is of these kinds of things, they don't help. I don't understand why people continue to, number one, answer a question without reading it and actually trying to solve the problem. Number two, giving inaccurate information. I spend a lot of time on groups and forums, and if I see a question people ask, number one, if I see 40 responses, then I'm sure there's nothing I can add to that. Number two, if I see somebody giving a valid answer, why would I repeat it? I don't need to. So if there's already a valid answer, then move on. If I can't contribute to the question, then I just keep moving on and look for something where I can help people. I don't understand where this comes from. So I guess what you're seeing here is my frustration of why in the world I started Photo Mentors TV, because it's just insane to see this kind of response. And I see it over and over and over again. Like I said, this is not, this specific instance is not, and doesn't matter where it was posted or what it was, because I see it over and over again on many, many groups and forums. And so, I guess what I would say is if you don't know the answer, don't chime in. If you do know the answer, be sure you read the question and find out what problem you're trying to solve before you actually, jump in there. One of the answers could have been, well, you really need a 50 millimeter or a 35 millimeter f1.8 to let more light in. That would give her probably, 2 stops of light. That would have helped. And that's a valid answer as well. But the problem is she's got a camera right there. She's trying to solve a problem. She's sort of on set, if you want to look at it that way. And so saying order something doesn't solve the problem either. That may be the long-term solution, but that may not be the solution to help her get her photo at that particular moment. My suggestion to her was bump up the ISO, 6400, 12,800, whatever it needs to be to get the picture and get the shutter speed high enough. Is it going to be noisy? Absolutely. Does it matter? No. Is it? You can fix a noisy picture. You can't fix a blurry picture. And so using whatever you have to do to get the picture, to get the right shutter speed is the answer. And then worry later on, then realize maybe you need a better lens or you need some other equipment, more equipment. But that's not the first answer I would always give somebody. Anyway, I apologize for the rant, but it really does burn me up when I see that. So anyway, let's see what we got here. So let's see here. Keith says he's got a question. What's your question, Keith? Go ahead and put a Q in front of it and post the question, and I'll be sure and try and answer it if I can. Yeah, love to see what you got to say. All right. In the meantime, let's go to this first one here. And I've got a question from Bailey Carroll. And Bailey says, this is a dumb question, which, there's no dumb questions, by the way. And I love dumb questions because I think they make me look really smart. I have a dumb question. Do I send a bunch of images and then have them choose one and then edit them? So this is the question is kind of worded kind of oddly, but what she was really asking, he or she was asking, is do I send the client a whole bunch of images, have them look at them and pick at them, and then pick their selects, and then do I edit them? And what I would say, first of all, is first thing, be sure and cull down your images. Trim those images down before you even send to the proofs, before you send them a list of proof images. And let's say you shoot 200 images. And, you don't want to send them and you edit them and you get them down to 100. You don't even want to send them 100 images. That's way too many images. Now, maybe for a wedding, that's a different story, but I'm talking about, let's say, a portrait session. Nobody needs 100 images. Nobody wants 100 images. And so what I recommend is you make sure you edit those images down to the ones that you really want them to select from. It happens all the time. I see it over and over again, both in my own work and other people's work. I've talked to other photographers about this. And inevitably, a picture that I think is like marginal, they might like this one, maybe not. Then I'll send it to them, and inevitably they will pick the one I hate the most. I don't know what it is. It's so I've gotten where I narrow that selection down to make sure that I want them. If this picture were to end up on a billboard, would I want to put my name on it? That's kind of the way I look at it. So be sure and trim those down. Only send them the best work. Now, you may get some complaints. I've had a lot of people, especially new photographers, their clients say, well, what about the rest of them? I only have 20 pictures or 150 pictures here. You shot a whole bunch. Where are the rest? Keep in mind that not every picture is going to be a keeper, number one. And number two, a lot of times you'll have a picture like this and then one like this. I mean, or their eyes will move. It's just, there's so subtle difference between the two that it's not worth sending them that image. So it's your job to pre-edit those images ahead of time. And then before you send them the proofs, kind of cull those down and send. Now, the other thing I would suggest is I will typically do a rough post-processing. It's not a lot. I'll go through. I'm not going to do a lot of sharpening. Not going to do a lot of just kind of some basic stuff that I think maybe needs to be done. And I always send a cover sheet that states something to the effect that these are proof photos only. They do not reflect the final images. They have not been color corrected, sharpened, or whatever, balanced and anything, and that these do not represent what the final image will look like. Because they'll look at the proofs and they'll think they're awful maybe because you haven't, finished working on them. So I may do a rough edit on them, a little bit of post-processing, maybe apply not a filter, but apply some kind of a setting I want across a group of images before I send them. But and then that's about it. So Keith, go ahead and post your question in the comments there, so I can try and answer it. All right, let's look at the next one. The next one is from April, and April says, "My good friends are getting married. Congratulations, April. They are aware I'm a beginner, and I have a D5600 with a 70-300. I have a 35 millimeter, probably an f1.8, and an 18 to 55 millimeter lens. Which lenses would be ideal?" Oh boy. The problem with wedding photography is there's a lot going on, and you have to be ready to capture that moment. The worst thing you want to do, it's one thing to do the pose settings after the ceremony and get the families together. That's a little easier. Any of the lenses you have there would probably work fine. Maybe the 18-55, 35 millimeter is going to be a little sharper, so any of those would work. But the problem is when you're in the middle of doing a church or the rehearsal, or the reception, you need to really be ready for anything. So you either have to plan out your lens strategy, or you have to have a lens that's a little more universal. So you might want to use something like an 18-200, rent that, or maybe and there may be a low light condition situation. So you might want to try and maybe rent 70-200 f2.8. That would be a nice lens to have. But this is a great situation where I'm one of my favorite sayings. You'll hear me say that if you listen to this show, you'll hear it over and over again. No matter what lens you have on, it's the wrong one. And what I mean by that is there's so many times I've shot over here, this looks perfect, and then I'll turn, and then the next thing I know, I need a wider lens or a longer lens. So when you do this professionally, as I have, you typically carry 2 or 3 camera bodies with different lenses on them. So one I'll have a 70-200 on, one I'll have a 24-70, and then the other, depending if it's sports or some other kind of event, maybe 2 camera bodies is plenty, believe most of the time. But I always like to have that so that I can grab a shot at moment's notice without having to try and change lenses. Because if you have to change lenses, there's a good chance that you probably will miss the shot. Okay, Keith, I don't know where you went, man. Go ahead and you said you got a question. How about go ahead and post it and I'll try and address it. Okay, the next one is this one says, I guess it's Kartik. I apologize if I don't pronounce your name correctly. If you only have an 18-55 and a 55-300 kit lens, which one would you pick for portrait photography? Okay, so either one, again, those will work, but probably I would try the 55-300, and here's why. A lot of people want a 50 millimeter, or 85 is even better, 85 millimeter f1.4, 1.8, because it gives you that depth of field, that shallow depth of field, that what they call bokeh. And so what you do, both the 18-55 and the 55-300 are not super fast. Probably, again, I think the 18-55 is a 3.5 if you're shooting at 18, and 4.6, 5.6 if you're shooting at 55 millimeter. But the depth of field is also in relationship to the distance to the subject. So if you put the 55-300 on and you back up, you don't have to back up to a 300 millimeter length, maybe 200 millimeter length or 100 millimeter, and you zoom in, Number one, you'll compress the background, so the background will look like it's getting closer, which is nice because you can sometimes add an object back there or look for the background that will help reinforce, say, a waterfall or some kind of object that's going to be blurry, but still it tells the story. But also you're going to get shallower depth of field when you zoom in. So instead of getting close and zooming out, back up and zoom in, and you'll get a much more pleasing photo. Also, your facial features are typically much better when you have a longer lens. So you don't want to use a 35 or anything like that. It's a little wide. And I know the whole thing about crop sensor and all that, but that's a myth a little bit. But typically that's why a traditional portrait lens on a full frame camera is around 85 to 135. Anywhere in there is a really great lens because it compresses the facial features. It looks very flattering. And as opposed to when you get back a little bit, I don't like, when I do portraiture, I don't like to be too close to a person. So some people use even a 50 as a little close if you're doing a headshot. And the reason is not because I don't like being close to people and not because of COVID. It's because I think it makes them uncomfortable. A lot of the subjects that we're photographing are not used to being in front of a camera. It's new to them. And so if you're right up on them, you're kind of invading their personal space a little bit. So my personal style is to back up using 85 or a little bit longer lens, give them some distance, and then I can talk to them and make them feel comfortable. And I'm not right in their face that way. So that's just my own personal style. You can do it however you want. So I guess my answer would be try the 55 to 300 to start with, see if that works. You can do some with 18 to 55 as well. Don't try and get everything in the picture. A tighter shot is going to be better than a wider shot. I notice a lot of people do these wide shots and they got trees and sky and all this stuff in the background, and it doesn't contribute to the picture whatsoever. So get in there, get a relatively tight shot. They'll probably appreciate it more. Okay, I guess, Keith, I don't know where you went, man. You must have left us here because I don't see your question. Let me make sure you didn't post it somewhere else. No, I guess not. Bummer. Okay. Let's keep going here. Okay. So Carolina says, I'm doing a shoot next week. My first real one, which is congratulations. Is $60 good for 1 hour, 12 photos included? It's a little low in my opinion. Now, I don't know your market. I know you're just starting out, and so you're a little bit, don't have a lot of confidence in your work, and so you don't want to charge too much. But it's a little low. The good thing is you're not including too many pictures. I think that's the mistake I see a lot of people make is they'll just give them, all the pictures out of a photo shoot, and that's not the way to do it. I would say if you were going to do $60, then I would probably lower the number of images to maybe 4 to 6 images. Maybe 6 images might be okay. And here's the reason why. Number one, you're going to get the best 6 if you do that. And so they should really like the pictures because they're going to be the best of the best. The next thing is, it's going to take you time to really do some editing on those. Nothing comes out of the camera perfect. You're going to want to crop it. You may want to change, warm it up, cool it down, sharpen it, do a little bit of processing. If you have to go through 12 photos, now maybe you're really good. Maybe you're great at using these different tools. And so, it's not an issue. But the problem is the more time you spend in post-processing, the less money you're going to make. So that $60, or let's say it's $100, may sound really good at first, but if you have to put in 4 hours, 2 hours of editing, all of a sudden that $60 becomes, $10 an hour or less, and it's not worth your time. So you want to make sure that you're charging enough that's the value of your time, that you're not going to resent doing the shoot, because that's what happens sometimes. You take on a job, you don't charge enough money. And all of a sudden you're working your butt off. You're not making any money. You're like, why am I doing this? You don't want to get in that situation. At the same time, you don't want to undersell yourself. You've got a lot of expenses. I mean, even though this is your first shoot, as you get further and further along, you're going to find that you've got number one, you've got your camera equipment. And here's a good example. You could not, if you went into a camera store and said, I want to rent DSLR and a lens for the day, it's probably going to cost more than $50 to do that, maybe a couple hundred. So the point is, they could not even rent this equipment for what you're charging, but yet you're giving your expertise, your talent. I mean, I know this is your first real job, but still, you obviously know something about this, and your equipment and your post processing for $60. So it's a little low. Again, I'd try and stay in the $120 range. I can't really advise you because, again, I don't know your market. I don't know a lot. You'd have to email me if you wanted, and I could give you a more specific advice. I could ask you some questions and give you some more specific advice. But, 12 images max, that's way too many. That's a lot, And so here's the thing. Let me give you a little brief thing on this. Try not to go too far off topic. What I've discovered is that you want to give your client the ability to control their own budget. So let's say, for example, it's $60 and they, or $100. Let's pick $100. It's $100 and you're going to get 6 photos. And they're like, wow, well, we don't know. That's, maybe that's too much. Maybe it's not enough. They don't know. But you give them the proof sheets, and let's say your proof sheet, you're going to give them 6 images, but let's say your proof sheet includes 20 images that they can pick from. What I've discovered is if you do a good job and you over deliver, they'll look at that and they'll say, oh man, these are great. We love these 6, but we also want these other 4, let's say another 6. And there's no reason and so what you want them to do is say, hey, I'm happy to give this to you. It's going to take me a little bit of time to post process those images. And to get those other images, it's going to be, now, again, the rate is different, but I wouldn't do it for less than $75 per image. But I have seen people do it for $45 per image. You can do $35. That's kind of low. But let's just say it's $45 per image, and your rate's $100 for the 6 images. Then what will happen is they can make the decision as to whether or not they want to spend that money. If they think the images are that great and they really love them, then it's worth the $45 per image to get those. If not, they can say, well, that's okay. The 6 images are fine. The analogy I use is you go into a restaurant, right? You sit down, you go in and have a nice meal. I'm going to order the prime rib. I think I'll have a glass of wine, the stuffed mushrooms. I want the asparagus, baked potato, and a dessert. And you look at all of a sudden, you say, wow, I don't know, that's like $120. I wasn't planning on spending that much. I tell you what, let's kill the dessert, let's kill the wine, and maybe I don't need the mushrooms. So the point is, now the client is in control of their own budget and how much they want to spend. And that way they can pick and choose. Instead of that's why I don't give my clients a lump sum. I don't say it's going to be $3,500. I break everything down so they can pick what they want to buy and what they don't want to buy. This gives them control and makes them make them decision as to what's expensive, what's not expensive, as opposed to you bundling everything in and giving more images. Give them a price, give them a few images, and then let them buy more images if the images are worth getting. I've had this happen many, many times. One time I don't often do this, but I had a client. I showed them the proof, and they're, oh, these are great. And I said, okay, great. This is how much it's going to be to post-process them. And they're like, oh, no, these look great. I don't need that. And I said, okay. So I took one of the images, and I retouched one, and I put it side by side, and I sent it to them, and I marked on the picture what I had done. And when they saw the retouching and they saw the post-processing, they said, oh, wow, you make me look great. Okay, fine. I agree. Let's get the retouch photo. So again, it puts them in control. I wouldn't want my work to be out there that wasn't post-processed and looks the best that it can. So I'm not going to let that out there anyway. But once they see the difference and you educate them, it makes a big difference. Anyway, I apologize for going too long on this, but it is a big issue. I know a lot of people struggle with it, and it touches on a lot of different topics. Okay, let's see. Okay, Jackie says, I just purchased myself an Apple iMac. Congratulations. Excuse me, great machine. I have one right here. My goal is to start focusing more on my photography. What are your favorite photo editing apps or programs? Boy, there's a lot of them out there. And I see this question asked in a lot of groups and forums as well. And again, you'll get everything from GIMP, which is a free program, to all kinds of things. But I believe there are probably 4 programs that you should look at, 4 apps that are major apps that would be, and I'll kind of explain why. The first one, of course, is Photoshop. Photoshop is a standard in the industry. And there's no doubt that if you want to do, especially if you want to do work for other people, that knowing how to use Photoshop would be important. I've been using Photoshop for 20 plus years. I think started with version 2.5, and now I don't know what they're up to. But so it's a great program. But here's the plus and the minus. The plus side is there's a lot of information about Photoshop out there. So there's a lot of, and so if you want education, there's all kinds of training. And if you want to do work for other people, then it's also something that you're going to want to know and be proficient with. The downside of it is that it's complicated. There's a lot of stuff to learn. There's like 3 or 4 or 5 ways to do the exact same thing. I may teach you one way, and yet you may watch a video and say, well, wow, this other guy did it this way. There's no right or wrong way to do it. The best way is the fastest way, because especially if it's, because time is money. But that's one of the problems. It's a very complex program. And I also find a lot of people use it for the wrong things. In other words, it's not a retouching program. It can be used for retouching. I use it for that in many cases, but you only are editing one image at a time. Okay. So, and you can sort of do a non-destructive, but just don't be technical on this. Just take my word for it. You're really editing one picture at a time, and you're editing and then you're saving that one picture. So it can be time consuming. There's ways around it, but, and I know how to use Bridge and all that. It's not what I'm talking about, but so it's a little bit different. And, sometimes you'll use it when you want to remove a tree or some object. It does a great job of that. But again, I describe it as trying to kill an ant with a hammer. It's an awful lot of capability just to be able to do some basic retouching. So the program that I think is probably better suited would be Lightroom. So Lightroom is a little bit different. Lightroom also has retouching capability. It's also an Adobe product. But it's what we call a digital asset management tool. It not only allows you to edit a photo and change color and white balance and sharpening and all that, but it also has a catalog or a database of all your images. And so it maintains where those images are located. And so if you have offline storage or things like that, it will know where those images are. And so that's one of its greatest assets. The other thing is, you can apply settings to multiple images at the same time. So for example, and this is good if you're doing weddings or portraits or something like that. Let's say you have a string of 15 pictures, 15 images, and you've edited them down, and those are the 15 that you're going to, do something with. You can take, and let's say the white balance is a little bit off, or you want to sharpen all 15 of those images. You can highlight them and apply those settings to all 15 images at one time. And so it makes it very, very fast. It's harder to do that in Photoshop. And you can do it, like I said, but it's not really intended to work that way. But Lightroom is. And so it's much faster for managing multiple images, event photography, wedding, stuff like that. It's much better suited for that. Now, here's the other thing about that, though, is the Lightroom doesn't have layers. So you kind of are editing on one layer of the picture. You can do brushes and some stuff, stack brushes and some things like that, but that's about it. Where Photoshop uses layers, so you can have all kinds of things going on at the same time. The other thing that the downside between Photoshop and Lightroom is they're subscription based. You rent them. You never really own the program. They switched that a number of years ago. So for about $10 a month, you can license Lightroom and Photoshop to use. So some people say, well, $10 a month's not bad. Well, that's $10 a month now. Is that going to stay that way? They've tried to raise the price to about $20 a month, I think, and they got a lot of pushback. But that could be a problem. So we don't know what the price is going to be. Eventually, it could be increased, $15 a month, whatever. But that's not even as big a concern for me. The thing that really rubs me wrong about Adobe and what they're doing with their licensing is that you're now locked in, meaning if you have an image you've edited and created in Lightroom and you no longer want to pay for the license, you want to use something else, you can access the photos, but you can no longer edit the photos. So all your settings are really of no use anymore. So you cannot edit your own copyrighted material. And that's where I have the problem with it. So I have a little bit of an issue with their licensing model. They're both great products. And I actually do teaching. I've been an instructor for both of them for many, many years. So I'm very familiar with them, but there is that kind of downside to consider. Now, there's another option that you could go with, and there's two more options actually. And that one is, this one is called Luminar. And Luminar is kind of it's put out by a company called Skylum. And Skylum was actually, I believe, if I got my information correct, I think they told me this, that the developers of the Nik software that were purchased by Google, these are the guys that developed that software. And when the company was sold, they left and started Skylum. I would describe Luminar as a cross between Photoshop and Lightroom. It still lets you manage multiple images. It still lets you apply a setting to multiple images at the same time. And there's all kinds of presets at the bottom. You can just, a lot of people like to have settings that make their images look the same. You just click one of these boxes at the bottom and automatically it will apply those looks, what they call looks, to the image. So anyway, that's just, it's just a great product. It's also, you buy it one time and that's it. I think it's $69, $79. I don't know what the current price is, but, so that's something to think about. If you're going to look at it. So I'd download the free trial of the Luminar product. It's skylum.com, I think, is the URL, or look up Luminar 4 and you'll find it. And the last product, which I really like, this is kind of my favorite product right now, and it's called Affinity Photo. And Affinity Photo is, again, it's a one-time purchase, and it's basically a Photoshop equivalent. I have not found anything I can't do in this program. So when you've been using Photoshop for a long time, what happens is you get to know the shortcut keys. So for example, if I want to duplicate a layer, it's Command J on the Mac, Alt J on the PC. Or if I want to, move something around, I know that that's the V key for the movement tool, or transform, or text. Anyway, the point is, every keystroke that I've learned in Photoshop works in Affinity Photo. So the transition for me has been very, very easy, and I've sort of switched everything over to using this product. It's just phenomenal, and I highly recommend you take a look at it. Again, for $49, it's amazing. I liked it so much that I actually bought their other two products. They have a complementary product to Adobe's Illustrator called Designer, Affinity Designer, and then they have another one which is similar to Photoshop InDesign, which is their layout software, called Affinity Designer. I believe that's what it's called. Maybe I got the names wrong. Anyway, and I bought that one as well because they were just such great products. They work so well together, and for the money, I just couldn't pass it up. And I just think and I have a lot of people come to me and that I train on and say, Lee, I'm looking for an alternative to Lightroom. I'm looking for an alternative to Photoshop. I don't want to pay that, or for whatever reason, they don't want to keep using it. And so I always try and keep my eye open for that. So I definitely take a look at Affinity Photo. I think you'll find it's a phenomenal product. Okie dokie. How we doing here? We're almost out of time. Let's look here. Okay. So, Katie says, any recommendations on editing raw photos? I also struggle with getting the right skin tone and ensuring photos match, especially when not the same batch edit. You know, I wish I had my see if I can bring this up for you. There is a so again, all the products I just mentioned could be used to accomplish what she wants to do. They'll all read raw photos. That's the other problem, by the way, is that a lot of people are using older versions of Lightroom or Photoshop, and when they get a new camera, it doesn't read the raw files. So Affinity Photo and Luminar does, and so for $49, I don't have to updating all the time. That's just one thing. But anyway, so yes, all those programs will work with raw photos. I recommend them. And to get the skin tones right, I would use either a gray card, and I don't have one here with me. I don't know where I have a card that has it's a chip chart card. It's made by oh shoot X-Rite, and X-Rite makes a little thing, a compact card and a carrier here. I forgot what they call the thing. Not compact, it's something else. It's a color checker. And so what it does is it will, and first of all, you want to have your monitor calibrated. That'd be one thing. And then the other thing is you want to have make so you know what you're looking for is going to be give you the right color, so you know that your monitor is correct. But then the other thing is you want to make sure that so when you're determining whether you're looking at the right color or not, you need to know whether or not the camera's calibrated correctly or not. So what I would do is I would look at, I found a color here, picture of it right here. See if I can bring this up for you. So it looks like this. This is one of them. They make one that's in a hard plastic case, and that's the one. I have a couple of those I carry with me. But anyway, this is part, and it has both a gray card and this card across the bottom here for doing matching. So what you want to do is you shoot this. Here's the way it works. You shoot this color first, and then you go about and you do your regular shoot, and you don't have to change it unless you have, the light changes, or you move to a new location and the light is very different, or mixed lighting situations. You move inside where you have a combination of outside and indoor. So anyway, you shoot this chart first, and then you go about your business and you do your shooting. When you get back in your processing software, you click an eyedropper on the white balance, and it will then give you an accurate white balance for that exact color scene that you were, or for that lighting that you were setting up. Now, so that'll give you an accurate white balance for skin tones. Now, here's the problem. In my experience, accurate is not desirable. It's ugly. Now, I use a chart like this because a lot of times if I'm doing product photography for a client, or if I'm doing something that's going to go in a magazine and I know the images are going to be laid out next to each other, I want to make sure they match perfectly. But when you're photographing people, and a lot of times I found that if it's perfectly white balanced, it may be a little cool looking. It's kind of sterile is the way I would describe it. So a lot of times I will get it accurate, and then I may bump it one way or the other. So if it's a little too cool, I may want to warm it up just a little bit to get the skin tones the way I want them to be. But if you don't have a calibrated monitor, then you don't know what you're looking at. So that's the first thing. X-Rite also makes something that will help you calibrate your monitor. It's the first thing I would do. And then look for one of these color checker cards to be able to make sure you're getting an accurate color white balance in your at your shoot. And actually, kind of the side benefit, honestly, kind of looks kind of cool. I mean, the client thinks it's kind of cool. You can hold it up. Hey, would you hold this up? And you go back, shoot a picture of them, and then that gives you your first image. So anyway, good thing to do, and that's a great question. Thanks for asking that one. Okay, let's see what we got here. So that one was with Katie. So we got one more, I think. Okay, so Robert says, I recently did a family portrait. Although I took multiple shots, I never really got all 4 members to look at the camera. Can anyone recommend a good YouTube video that would show me how to take the husband's head from one photo and place it on another photo from that same sets of shots? Oh boy, Robert, you got yourself in a jam there, buddy. You can do it. It can be done. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But it's going to take you some time, and it's maybe hard to match. If the head's not quite right, if it's just a simple change, you can get away with it. But this is an example where I've seen clients say, well, can't you just Photoshop it? Can't you just take this head? Well, yeah, you can do anything, but number one, it takes a lot of time. A lot of time means it's taking you a lot of money. So what I would suggest is you look for a retoucher. You can find some that are not too expensive. If you really need to have this done, and I would go to the client and I would explain to them, I mean, I'm going to give you another part of this question, another answer as part of this. And I explain to them, look, here's the situation, here's the proofs. If they're asking for it, for example, then let them know it can be done, but you definitely want to have an extra fee to do that. You don't want to make that part of the shoot because you'll just eat up all your profit. So you want to make sure that they know it's going to be an additional charge to have that done. Then I would talk to a retoucher, someone that does this kind of work, and ask them what it would cost to have that done. If you want to do it on your own, then what I would suggest is you need to be way more. In fact, this goes regardless. You want to be a lot more careful about your shoots. You want to right before I push that shutter. And that's why sometimes I don't like using a tripod, but it's kind of nice sometimes with a tripod because you can kind of look around the tripod and the camera, and you're kind of looking at what's going on. You look at, okay, is everybody's eyes? Everybody look at me. The thing I'll do is I'll make sure I'll kind of hold my hand up or something, and I'll make sure they're looking at me, and I'm watching everybody's face. I'm watching everybody's eyes. If they're not looking, hey, look over here. And I want to make sure I got my attention. You're in control. You're the director. You want to make sure you're controlling they want you to direct them, by the way. They want you to tell them where to look, what to do. So you want to make sure you're doing that. You have them look, say, tell them if you can't, especially this is an issue when you're photographing groups of people. A lot of times, I'll tell the person, look, if you cannot see my hand on this top front of the camera, then I can't see your eyes. So make sure you're not being, hidden by the person in front of you. So you just really need to be better about that. This is a life lesson for you. Don't let it happen again. Make sure you get something they're looking at you, and if they're not, get their attention, fuss at them, make a joke, whatever, but just make sure that they are paying attention to you and that you're getting their eyes open and they're looking at the camera. So anyway. All right. I think that's it for this evening. I want to thank everybody for joining me. I hope it was been helpful as usual. And, again, we do this every week, every Friday. I'd love for you to join me and be able to ask your own questions. I don't know where Keith went. He had a couple of questions. I was hoping to be able to get his answers in here. But again, every Friday night, 9 p.m. And if you, I'd love for you to join me next week for the photo reviews. Be sure and again send those emails to help@photomentor.tv. Put the word review in the subject. And I'd like to get as many of those as possible, so we can go over those, and hopefully you can learn something from that by watching other people's work and what they're doing. So, anyway, again, thanks for joining me, and look forward to seeing you next week.